You were rarely able to see your sister during her last 3 months when she was struggling with her illness. Your sister didn't want to see you. Of course, that's because you had been estranged for a long time. Although she was your only sibling, you heard all about her illness only through your mother. Slender and tall, your sister stood out. Her facial features were well defined. People thought you, with your plain looks, must have grown up with an inferiority complex, but that was not true. It was your sister who had suffered from an inferiority complex. You couldn't understand why your sister was jealous of all your shortcomings. She was jealous that you were simple-minded and stubborn, that you chose an unpopular major in college, that you hadn't had a decent love affair by age 30, that you didn't get any real financial support from your parents because you didn't get along with them, especially with your father, and that you were living an unstable life, still paying monthly rent for your studio at your mature age. She married a handsome man 8 years older than herself, who owned a solid business, lived in a high-end apartment with a living room overlooking a river, and had a display case where she showed off tableware worthy of a royal family in a distant land. Yet she seemed to keep her life at a distance, as if shunning foul-smelling food. One day you asked yourself, you asked what went wrong and where. You asked who was colder, you or your sister. It happened when you were a freshman and your sister was a senior in college. It must have been Monday of the second or third week of December, as it was right after the fall semester ended. When she said that morning, "Please go somewhere with me," you asked, "Where?" "The hospital." When you asked what her illness was, she said, "Just come with me." It was a morning when it looked as if it would snow heavily. Until she came out of the operating room after the abortion, you were waiting for her with your fists tightly clenched. When you hesitantly offered to support her, she was furious. When you got a taxi, she got in the back seat, saying, "I'm going to lie down a little. Sit in front." The sky that looked about to gush snowflakes hadn't yet spit out a single flake. Anticipating Christmas, the streets were crowded. Endless cars with red taillights were waiting for the traffic light to change so they could make a left turn. You were still clenching your fists in the front seat and turned from time to time to see your sister crouching in the back seat. You had a sore throat as if you had a cold. Your sister didn't have to ask anything of you. She knew that you were the only person who would forever keep the secret from anybody, including your parents. Because she knew that you loved her with all your heart. Despite that knowledge, your sister no longer loves you after that day. She didn't want to talk with you or even look you in the eyes. Although you tried very hard to regain her heart for a few years after, you realized one day that no effort of yours could bring back her love and you turned away from her. Her eyes were clear and deep. She had a long neck and delicate collarbones. She kept her fingernails and toenails neat. In the summer, her small feet, visible through the leather straps of her sandals, were sweet. After teaching you how to use Western-style knives and forks, she presented you with a small heart-shaped 18K pendant. "A short necklace like this should be gold," she advised earnestly. "Not silver or copper. They cheapen you." Smiling brightly, she continued, "Women in our family don't need eyelid surgery because we have thin eyelids, but you better have a Mongolian fold surgery. Your eyes will look much bigger." After leaving the restaurant, she led you on a round of brand-name stores, but you made her sad by not buying the clothes she recommended. In the mirror, they made your legs especially long because it was tilted at an angle. The small pendant she gave you shone on your neck. You kept shaking your head, saying, "No, this is not me." Before that year was over, you once said to her in a room late at night, "I really have no idea how people can live confined within generally accepted notions, how they can endure such a life." She was removing her makeup in front of the mirror, sitting with her back to you. For a moment, her reflection darkened. Looking into your eyes in the mirror, she said, "Do you think so? But wouldn't there be people who find it fortunate to be able to do that? I mean, to hide behind the generally accepted ideas." At that moment, you felt you understood her, vaguely, as if making out a form behind many layers of thin white curtains. She wasn't a naive girl. She only wanted the safest place, a quiet shell house like a turtle or a snail, a place like a deep and hard ovary inside an apple. You knew all about her efforts for almost 10 years to have a baby, expensive herbal teas from clinics, maxa cauterization treatments she got below her navel until she had a scar, tests for fertility treatments, times when she was anxiously waiting for treatments, and cruelly repeated miscarriages. You were the only one who noticed that her face darkened whenever you showed up at your family gatherings. Smiling brightly, you tried not to love your sister. You tried very hard to look at her as if she was a stranger. You tried not to look lovingly at the bridge of her nose that wrinkled when she laughed like a mischievous boy. You tried very hard not to awaken the indescribably tender feelings you have only toward your own flesh and blood with whom you shared the childhood. You tried to freeze your heart to be as cold and hard as you could.